paintings by people like Thomas Gainsborough, who's a very famous landscape and portrait painter, kind of contemporary Georgian painter. And the whole gallery was actually paid for and dedicated to Queen Victoria during her reign and it says this on a plaque, by the women of Bath. And I don't know how much clout the women of Bath have now, let alone in Georgian times.
Yeah.
But there are certain women that have more clout. They're the women that are the wives of the Freemasons.
Yeah.
Who are in their own fraternal orders because they're so bored.
Yeah, and I mean, you mentioned the Eastern Star, and as what we know about that right now is that that's the lodge that both men and women can join.
I think there's some which do allow men to join. I think more they call it cooperative Freemasonry.
Yeah.
Which is the one for both. And I think the Eastern Star, maybe in recent years, they've had to change some of their admissions, but it was almost always privately, and purely for the ladies. Right. But that may have changed in previous in the years around now, because the average age of the Masons in each lodge, is sort of in the 70s.
Right.
And their numbers are dying off faster than they're growing.
Well, exactly, and that's a good point, because there's, I believe, in a way, constant reformation, as it were, of I mean, we can see it in religion, and we can definitely see it within, fraternal organizations as well, because if their main interest is to stay alive and have new people joining, they need to constantly revamp themselves, because just as you say, I mean, the many orders are kind of, you can see these articles, popping out so many times in different newspapers. If you do like a news Google search on Freemason or whatever, it's basically these recruiting articles, as it were. They even giving you the lodge, telephone number to call at the end of the article. So yeah, I think that it's definitely, and this is part of the kind of the veil which has been brought up, and it's almost kind of a mistaken veil, because I think if researchers were looking into it better, as we know, the average lodge ages of established lodges is very old. But what you're referencing, and what researchers haven't talked about so much because they just want Freemasonry to go away, is that there are a lot of new lodges and new groups being set up all the time, specifically by younger people, for groups of younger people. And this is very much a part of this whole propaganda campaign which has come through with these films through Disney, various books from various authors, all just piquing the interest in these orders. And this is a big aspect which is only now starting to be picked up on. And for a while, people thought that massively the numbers were going down, but they are within the established lodges which have the older memberships. Yeah. Whereas, as you said, it seems to be a kind of resurgence amongst, the people. It's almost like a dichotomy that's been set up. You have all of these people that, from 9/11 and from that kind of period, have kind of shifted to the more anti the state, anti the government, anti military intelligence whole, network. And then you get the people that kind of say all of those people are crazy. Yeah. And skittish and everything. And a lot of these times, these are the people that are the managers and are the people in positions of authority, I know that from having worked at places and talked about these subjects with people in the staff rooms. Often the managers, who become this kind of father, paternal, Zeus-like figure over all of the employees, right. Are very sort of damning of any of this stuff. Yeah. And so you can see there's a definite division which is growing amongst the sort of younger people as well. Yeah, sort of the 30s, 40-year-olds. And so it's really fascinating. Whilst you've got this group which is growing, which is learning more and more about the machinations, the physics of power itself, whether that be through these fraternal orders, whether it be through politics, banking, all of these things. People really understanding that and realizing that this is quite a negative, oppressive thing. Yeah. And at the same time, this group of people that are saying, look at all the technology, look at all of the wealth,
look at all the holidays I go on every year.
Hmm.
You know.
Yeah.
So it's very interesting. At the same point where we've got groups like yourself, you know, and very many others that are doing radio shows on these subjects.
Yeah.
You've kind of got people actively ignoring it and carrying on living the way that they're living.
Yeah.
And falling into some of the catchment groups of some of these fraternal orders.
Mm.
So I find that a fascinating thing, which we're going to learn more about, obviously, in the next 10 to 15, 20 years.
Yeah, of course, obviously.
It's going to be a very pivotal time, it seems.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, it's being done on many levels, of course. You mentioned, movies. We have things like the Librarian. I don't know if you've seen that series. Very interesting. Then, of course, we have the Nicolas Cage movies. What are they called? The National Treasure, you know.
Yeah.
And to some extent, I think these and even the Da Vinci Code, if you want to go that far, that those are, appealing. They're finding a new level. People are fed up with all the other stuff, and it's a kind of a new high. They can find something more interesting, diving into a mystery instead of doing something else. And of course, again, it's the both sides of these. Just because you're interested, just as you say, doesn't mean that you're or want to go in and join the an order or fraternal organization. But just looking at least, that's important. I feel, and just trying to realize what the heck is going on.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the subject of Dan Brown and the Da Vinci Code is it's really very interesting because many people have speculated that he's working for this group and that group, and to me it doesn't really matter in what way, because even if he isn't working for any of these groups, he's coming at this knowledge from a very capitalistic, materialist point of view. He's trying to sell as many of these books on stuff which he knows isn't bang up truth and history, otherwise he'd sell it as that.
Yeah.
So he's aiming to make a lot of money. He's not aiming to get the message out. And so by telling this kind of a skewed version whilst gathering all this wealth and, releasing the rights for a movie, he's kind of put over this very strange image of all of this information into the public mind. And it's going to take probably another good film or another few documentaries to cover the subject well enough and to go into enough detail with enough intrigue to be able to break that, as it's been so powerful in the mass consciousness.
It is. Exactly, and that's why I also can't help to kind of realize that there is something more else going on behind it. I mean, I remember Jordan Maxwell were talking about that a while back, and even the simple fact, of just how a book ends up on the number one top-selling list, and once it's up there, of course, everyone buys it. How does that happen? It's very interesting just thinking about these things. It's so easy if we think about it for a big publishing company like that to just through some kind of agreement with somebody, just putting it up there, and once it's out, everyone is talking about it and everyone wants to buy it. So it's definitely worth thinking about.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to elaborate on the point that I made, it's the same thing with a lot of politicians and a lot of other people in power, as you can't know for sure whether they're a member of this order or that order, or involved with this group, or what their overall stance is. You can get a rough idea, but what you can definitely see intuitively, emotionally, and intellectually is that these people are very greedy, very selfish, and very, very centered on their own worldview, and nothing else even comes close to touching that. And so, in regarding to Dan Brown, as you said, I mean, it may well be that he may have had words with some group. It may have even been that his publisher was simply, a connected man.
Yeah.
Spoke to somebody to check to see if he was allowed to publish it.
Yeah.
And this could take many different things, but what you can see for definite is the materialistic outlook that Dan Brown has taken, and the difference between him and Michael Tessarian.
Right.
Who was talking about things which are much more interesting, who's talking about things connected to real history.
Right.
trying to read between the lines and not coming at it from this hyped up scam angle.
Right. And also, I mean, it's